Now, as a child, this was hands down my favorite time of year. My parents did Christmas really, really well. So right after Thanksgiving, and my parents would bring home this. Any of you remember this? The Sears catalog. And it's so hard to even say that now, knowing Sears is gone and going away. It's like, but boy, the Sears catalog was like, excitement level went through the roof when mom and dad walked in and put the Sears catalog down. It's like, because all of us kids got to take that and we would get to go through and circle whatever we wanted in the Sears catalog, which of course as a kid, it never even dawned on me how much of it I was going to get. It didn't matter. For me, the excitement was just going through page after page of toys and circling and circling. I'm sure I circled probably 200 things. And the interesting thing is, I never felt like this is the one thing I want for Christmas. I just circled 200 things every Christmas, and I was never disappointed. It was like, yeah, all right. So I did pull this page because I would have circled practically everything on that page as a boy. It was like, I want all of these, just the whole page, Mom and Dad. And I loved it. And then my mom and dad would get presents early, and they would wrap them. We'd put the tree up, and then they'd put the presents out, and we were not allowed to touch them. And so the excitement just built and built and built and built until Christmas morning. They always made us wait till Christmas morning, and then they would have stockings too. And the stockings always had this big, do you guys ever see these? The big Lifesaver books. I loved those. I loved it. There were so many elements of my childhood with Christmas that were fantastic. I just loved it. Some of you have similar kind of stories. Christmas was a big deal for you. It was excitement, maybe like your one of the most wonderful times of the year for you. But then I read this when I was prepping for this series, this message today. Did you know that 64% of people are affected by the holiday blues? 64%. When I read that, it really kind of shifted what I was going to do in this series. I had a different idea for where I was going to talk about today, and I read that statistic, and I thought, well, if that statistic is true, that means half of the people that come in during this series are going to be struggling a little bit. Half the people that come in to Peniel over the next month, this is not the most wonderful time of the year for them. They're going to be a little bit feeling overwhelmed, or they're going to be feeling a little stressed, or they're going to be feeling a little down. And again, there's degrees in that, right? Some are just a little bit, some are severely down based on losses they've experienced in this year. For some, the holidays are going to be very hard. And I thought, I've got other things planned in this series, and we'll talk about those, but I thought it would be important to address this. I read this one woman, she said this. She said, I don't have a job right now, single mom. I have no money for kids. It is the unhappiest holiday this year, and I'm tired of hearing happy holidays. Would you pause for just a moment and think about the fact that in our communities right now, these people exist? Some of you don't need to pause. This is your story. This is where you're at today. But for those of you, this is going well and you're excited about the holidays, just remember that these people exist. And what we always say, whenever I'm teaching about a subject, is if I'm teaching on a subject and you're like, not really for me, I'm really happy about the holidays, then what we always say is don't make it about you. Remember that God has a purpose in you being here and hearing this message or watching it online. Maybe there's someone in your path right now who's going to need something from what we're talking about today. So pay extra attention, because God may want to use you to encourage somebody who's struggling with it. And so for today, in this series, we're going to start by talking about how to deal with the holiday blues. Would you please open up your program, take out the notes that you'll find inside. Can I ask you to grab your notes, grab a pen? And while you're getting your notes out, I want to say welcome to those of you who are watching on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. So glad that you've tuned in today. And welcome to those of you who have also watched, are watching on our website at penielchurch.life. We're so glad that you're watching as well. So you want to grab your notes? And I am going to do something that I think in the history of 29 years of me speaking that I think I've only done twice. I'm not starting with point one. I finished the notes and sent them off, and as I was doing, I do lots of final prep after I send my notes off on Thursday. And when I'm like, this isn't organized right, and I am an organized person, so it kind of tortured me. And I fought it all morning until literally right before I came here this morning. I'm like, I'm switching the points. They're going in the order that I want them to be in, that I feel like they need to be in. So for those of you who are like me, you're like, I like my thing, you're going to have to scribble out some numbers, and you're going to have to rearrange these in the order that they actually should go. So we're starting with point 2. So that's just me and my own deal. So we're starting with it because I have to start here and then everything flows from here. And that's, by the way, I didn't even practice it. I made the change. I have no idea what it's going to do to my notes. So I'm going to have, this is going to be a potentially very glitch-filled Sunday, but I don't care. I have to do it in the right order. That's just me. So first thing I want you to think about, if you're struggling at all with the holiday blues, you find yourself dealing with the holiday blues this season, or you're with somebody who is, the first thing that we need to talk about are boundaries. And I came to a very important realization in my life and teaching just recently. I have not done a good enough job at teaching on the subject of boundaries. I have not even come close to talking about this important subject at the level that it needs to be addressed. I can correct that, and I fully intend to. But the reality is, there are so many people, and in my opinion, it's a growing amount of people, who are controlled by the feelings and opinions of other people. Other people control them. It's like, oh, I can't do this because what will they think? What will they feel? How will they react if I make this decision? That's a boundaries thing. And in my experience, as I'm watching, especially with this generation come up, they are controlled by, what will our peers think? What will everybody around me think? I can't do that. It's like, whoa, this is a toxic thing. You will not live a more miserable life than trying to please people. You want to make yourself absolutely sick. Try and please people. You can't. You cannot please people. And boundaries are really the solution to this. And boundaries at the holiday is such an important subject because we need them. So let me talk about what boundaries are. Boundary is a dividing line, right? I'm on this side, you're on that side. A boundary is a physical or emotional or sexual or mental limit that we set in a relationship that protects us from being controlled or manipulated or abused or even exploited. So what an important subject. The reality is, the best way to think of it in my mind, the way I think of it, is a fence. So this is my yard. That's what the fence shows. No, it's not actually my yard. But this is my yard. And everything in my yard is mine. You don't get to crawl into my yard and put in a pool. I will not, well, maybe I'd be happy with that. But you don't get to come in there and put up a Minnesota Vikings stand, all right? Now I'm not happy. Right? Out you go. And take that thing with you, right? It's my yard. You don't get to come in my yard and do that. But the other side works as well too, right? I don't get to go in your yard and put up what I want to put up. My yard is mine. Your yard is yours. And the boundary between us as individuals is this fence. And boundaries, again, we can't put fences up. We can set boundaries up though. So in my yard, these are the things that are in my yard today. My yard is my feelings, my choices, my reactions, my decisions. You do not get to control any of those 4 things. Now, isn't it true that there are people who will try and control those 4 things? They will try and tell you what your decisions should be and ought to be and need to be. And they will try and tell you even how to feel. Don't feel that way. Ever have someone say something like that to you? They tell you how to feel. They tell you what to do. They tell you how you should be reacting. You shouldn't be disappointed with that. Oh, well, thank you. You don't get to tell me that. It's my yard. My yard. My yard are my choices, my feelings, my reactions, my decisions. Your yard are your feelings. I don't get to tell you that. I don't get to tell you how to feel. Your choices, your reactions, and your decisions. And the reality is, I have absolutely no control about how somebody on the other side of the fence feels. None. Now, this is what gets us in trouble all the time with boundaries, is like, I can't make this decision because they'll feel so bad. They'll feel so bad. If I don't come to the holiday party this year, they're going to feel so bad. We make our decisions based on how everybody else around us feels and what do they want. But isn't it true that on the other side of the fence, you make that decision, this one will feel bad and this one won't? Isn't that true? 2 people, same decision, totally different reactions. You know what that means? You are 0% responsible for other people's feelings and reactions. None. Because they could have chosen to look at that a different way, right? That person did. They don't feel bad. They understand. This one feels bad. You are not responsible for anything on the other side of the fence. Nothing. You are not responsible for their feelings, and you are not responsible for their decisions, and you're not responsible for their reactions. And we spend so much of our lives making ourselves absolutely miserable, trying to figure out how we're not going to make them upset, how we're not going to make them miserable, how we're going to make them happy. You can't do it. And God says, you're not God. There's a boundary here. You are responsible for what's in your yard. They're responsible for their yard. Again, this is really the key question in boundaries is whose yard are you responsible for? Now I'll show you why this ties into Christmas in just a moment. In order for boundaries to be effective, you got to answer these questions. What brings me joy? Some of you have never asked that question. If I asked you to make a list of what makes everyone around you happy, you could make that list. But if I asked you to give me a list of what makes you happy, you've never even spent any time thinking about it. Because your whole life is controlled by this. I've got to control everyone around me. I've got to make everyone around me happy. I've got to spend my life doing this. You're making yourself miserable. What makes me happy? What are my priorities? Well, how do I want to spend my time? So this is the boundary. So here's how this affects us. Because at no time in my experience are our lack of boundaries exposed like they are at the holidays. And the consequences for not having appropriate boundaries in our life are devastating to us. Emotionally, financially, spiritually, all kinds of things happen to us because we don't have boundaries in our lives. So let me talk about 3 different areas where you're going to need to think about boundaries for the holidays. And actually, now that when I was prepping this, I'm like, I should have done this last week. Or maybe the week before that. So I'm a little bit late to the game, okay? Because some of you, we're 2.5 weeks away. Isn't that staggering to anyone else? 2.5 weeks away. So some of you needed this a little bit ago. But you need 3 plans in your life. Boundaries. These are boundaries. You need an unhealthy people plan. You need an unhealthy people plan. What boundary are you going to put up between you and the unhealthy people in your life that you have to be around at the holidays? Right? Because some of you, and again, I know people that their families are wonderful, and getting together at the holidays is like always good and always sunshine and always beautiful, and that may not be your experience. That may not be your experience. Some of you are going to be around people at the holidays who are very, very unhealthy for you. And they are constantly putting you down, and they judge your decisions, and they have all kinds of helpful little advice for you about how you should be doing everything. And it's exhausting and draining and demeaning. Some of you are going to spend way too much time around unhealthy people, and part of what needs to happen is a boundary. And put a boundary up with unhealthy people. How much time are you going to allow yourself to be around people that are toxic for you? So I read about a family that they worked this out with their counselor. They wanted to be around his family, but they were really, really unhealthy people. And so they used to do this like multi-day party, and everyone would come and spend the night, and it was just bad. And so finally they put a boundary up, and they said, from now on, we will go to the holiday celebration, but we will be there from this time to this time, this short little window, and then we'll leave. We're not spending the night. They put the boundary up. Now, again, some of you, even hearing this, you know you need to put a boundary up with some unhealthy people in your life, maybe family members. And what's your first thought? I could never do that because, how they'll react, and what will they say, and what will they think? Okay, so look at this. You're going to make your decision based on what's on the other side of the fence? Because isn't it true that some of your family will go, okay, we get that, right? And some will not get it, right? You can't control what happens on the other side of the fence. You got to do what's healthy for you. You do what's healthy for you. You got to make sure that you're spending time with people you love. And the Bible is such an emphasis on this. Look at this great verse. It says, Paul wrote to Timothy, he said, I long to see you again. I remember your tears as we parted. I will be filled with joy when we are together again. Some of you are not anticipating a lot of joy with some of the people you're going to be celebrating Christmas with. And that's just a fact in our broken society. So how will you limit your exposure to unhealthy people this holidays? Some of you really need to think about it. This is a big deal. Some of you, not as big a deal. You get along with people pretty well in your families, and the people you're going to be with in the holidays are going to be okay. Okay. So then I bet all of you need this one, right? A spending plan for the holidays, a boundary. Here's my boundary. I'm spending this much, no more. Oh, this is tough. Did you know, I could not believe this. There was a survey that was done by a group called Think Finance. They discovered that 45% of Americans say that the financial stress of the holidays makes them wish they could skip the whole thing. 45% of Americans. So overtaxed financially during the holiday season, they wish they could skip the whole thing. Is that you? You in that camp? It's tough, really tough. And the Bible would say, okay, well, you need a plan. And a plan for your money is called a budget, right? So you need a spending plan. The Bible says this, good planning and hard work will lead to prosperity. But if you don't plan, you will not be prosperous financially, according to what the Bible says. So you need a plan in place on how you're going to control your spending. So before, I've got a zillion kids, and I've got grandkids now, and I've got all these people in my life that I really love, and I like doing gifts, and so I have done this stupid in the past. I have done destructive spending. Oh man, I mean, I know that I've spent about $6,000 on some past Christmases, especially when the kids were younger. So I can get a little carried away. So knowing that about myself, in November, I sat down, and I budget every month. I sat down and I made my whole Christmas spending plan. What am I going to spend? So that I could tell every dollar where it's going to go. I identified every key person in my life that I'm going to buy a present for. I put a list how much I'm going to spend. I made sure that my budget could cash flow that. And then immediately something happened after I set the budget and blew the whole thing to smithereens. An expense came up that is so much bigger than what I'd even planned for. But the reality is because I had a plan, I could just adjust the plan. And I'll still be okay. So I'm not saying that it's financially pleasant for me. It's not pleasant. But I'm also not going to be anxious and overwhelmed by it because I've already spent the time saying this is where it's going to go. Now here's the reality, okay? Isn't it true that there are seasons in your life where financially you just can't afford to do much at some holidays, right? You been there? I've certainly been there. And those are really tough because, again, what do we fear the most is, well, they won't be very understanding if I don't bring Uncle Rick his present that I've always done for, right? It's like, or if I don't bring a present to the Christmas office party, if I don't bring a present to, I mean, there's just, everybody wants a present. And we fear so much people's reactions. Again, we make ourselves miserable because so much of our emotional energy is on the other side of the fence. The reality is, in this case, you just need to say, what can I financially afford to do? That's the number one thing. And you make your plan based on that, not based on how they're going to react to you saying, I can't afford to bring anything this year. I can't afford to do that this year. Yeah, but they'll get mad and they'll be disappointed and they'll be upset. And they'll get over it. Your boundaries matter. Some of you, like I said, I'm a little late on this one. Some of you have already started buying. It's like, oh no, where were you 2 weeks ago? Where were you Black Friday? Right, I'm sorry. So third is an activity plan. Oh man. An activity plan. So I'm going to set boundaries up. I'm not going to let other people's emotions dictate my decisions. They can handle it and react any way they want. I'm going to do what's right for me and my situation in life. An activity plan, how many of you are already too busy? I mean, if I were to ask you, how many of you feel like you are too busy to slow down and enjoy this holiday? I am amazed just saying the sentence, we are 2.5 weeks away from Christmas. That sentence doesn't make me feel very good. It's like, It's like, and I know what I've got to get done in the next 2.5 weeks. I needed this a little bit ago. I needed activity plan, right? It's to control my activities. Otherwise, what we end up doing is because there's so many people who want so much of the holidays, it's like, hey, let's have a party. Hey, let's get together. Right, great. Can't we do it in the 11 other months? Isn't there, there are other months, right? I won't be doing anything in January. Can't we do something then? But But we keep saying yes, and the Bible talks about this. It says an impulsive vow is a trap. Later, you'll wish you could get out of it. Do you wish you could get out of something you've already said yes to for the holidays? I mean, we just do this over and over again because we don't think about the fact that we have limits and we need to put up boundaries. We can't say yes to everything. So we've got to get better. No is not a 4-letter word. It's not. You're okay saying no. So I read about this sad story about this woman who, not this season, but in a Christmas past, her mom died right before Christmas. And she was very, very close to her mom. And she was just heartbroken. She was actually going to see a counselor to deal with her grief. And with her counselor's blessing, she came up with this plan for the holidays because she didn't want to go through the Christmas pretending like everything was fine. Or answering the question she knew she was going to get 1,000 times, how are you doing? And having to feel like she's got to lie to them all because she doesn't want to ruin their day. So she made a plan that she wasn't going to participate in any of the normal Christmas parties that she was being invited to or any of the family even get-togethers. She was too sad and wanted to be able to heal and grieve her loss even through the holidays. Now, some of you, that's what you need to do or have needed at some point in your life to do, and you couldn't do it. Why? Because you were so afraid of what everyone would say. Well, they'll get mad if I don't come. Putting up boundaries isn't easy, but we are destroying ourselves by taking the boundaries down. It's the only healthy way to live your life. She made the right decision that day. So some of you know you really struggle with this. 2 things, I just put them on as keys. You don't need to fill them in. They're already filled in for you. I am not responsible for other people's feelings. Some of you, that needs to be your mantra, and you need to chant it to yourself all day long. I am not responsible for how other people feel, how other people react to my decisions. I am not responsible. You are not. And it's okay for you to take your feelings and choices into account. It's okay to say my feelings and choices matter. It's okay to say that. Jesus said you can just say yes and you can just say no. He said just a simple yes I will, no I won't. Your word is enough. You don't have to explain it. You don't even have to explain it. You can just say no, we won't be able to attend this year. Now again, I'm standing here saying, you just do this. Just tell them no, you're not coming, right? Just say no, you're only going to be here for this amount of time. I know how hard I am, or how hard this is to do in practice. Years ago, we used to try and get together with both sides of the family for Christmas, and we used to travel for Christmas, and then we started having lots and lots of young kids. And I remember, and then the church grew, and I'm a busy pastor, and Christmas and Easter are like the 2 times where life goes crazy. You got all these extra services to plan, and I remember one Christmas where everything changed. Christmas was on a Sunday. And we tried to have church that Sunday morning, 2 services. So on top of the Christmas Eve service and 2 services on Christmas morning and all the other activities, and I'd been sick a lot in the month of December that year, and we were hiring as a church, and we were dealing with all this other stuff, and it was just overwhelming. And I reached the end of those 2 services, and then I was supposed to pile all 5 young kids in a van, drive 3 hours north to be at a cabin overnight with all these other people for 24 hours with 5 young kids, and then drive back and celebrate Christmas that way. I got in the van, drove down 1 mile, turned around, and drove home. And I called him and I said, I can't make it. I physically cannot do this. I'm sorry, I said I can't. I'm going to collapse if I try this. And then I'm going to kill some of these young kids. So I want them to survive the holidays, right? I can't do it. And they were so understanding and no. Oh, man. But it began a change. It began a point of asking the question realistically, what can we do? Where do we need to put a boundary up and say no? But they'll get mad. Oh, they get mad. And whose reaction and whose feelings are you responsible for? Theirs? You want to make your life miserable, try and be responsible for other people's feelings and reactions. Don't do it. All right, so that's why I had to start with this one, because this is like this. Some of you have a lot of stuff going out this holiday already. It's like you got holes in the bottom of the bucket. Your energy, you got energy drains, you got financial drains, you've got all kinds of, so you got to seal the holes in the bottom of the bucket. That's what boundaries are. Seal in the hole so you can have a little bit of reserve. Then you can do these other things. So second thing, and these will go a lot quicker, I promise. Number 3, get your emotions out in a healthy way, especially if this is a struggle season for you. If not, you may need this in January. Because for many people, what really hits them, the downtime for them is January, when we're in the middle of polar vortexes and giant snowfalls and no end in sight. And some of you, that's when you're really going to need this. Because January is going to be the hard part for you. So you got to get your emotions out in a healthy way. And this is something I have learned so much about. I mean, you're looking at a man who's learned a lot about this over the years. I read this one quote from an author who said, although our emotional state profoundly affects what we do, most of us are unaware of how we're feeling at any given moment or what that impact may be. That's true, especially for, I don't want to generalize, but I see it a lot true in my life, in my past. It's been much more true with men who stereotypically in our society are not allowed to be emotional beings. And so I grew up this way. Emotions don't matter, they are wrong, don't feel anything, and I suppressed emotions for most of my life. The problem is you can't live that way. Here's what I want you to hear me say. You are not a thinking being who sometimes feels. You are a feeling being who thinks. And you were created by God to be that way. So if you don't learn how to pay attention to the emotions inside of you, it will be destructive for you. I promise you that. Because that's what happened to me. So destructive. So what we know from science, and I love science and what they do, and this is a picture from what we can do. We can put your machine on your brain and hook it up to a machine, and we can see what's going on inside and where activity is happening. That little red spot is your amygdala. You ever heard of your amygdala? Whenever you see someone lose their cool, it's called an amygdala hijack. That's the center of your emotional reactions and responses. So you see it all the time in sports. Somebody, throws a basketball and takes a swing at somebody. That's an amygdala hijack. It's like, you've had them. You've had them. Every parent to young children, you had a hijack. You're like, you're all going to your room now. It's like, okay. It's like, oh, sorry, Mom went a little crazy there. Dad went a little crazy there. Sorry about that. That's an amygdala hijack. You may have it at work, not a good thing. May have them in other places. It's just tough on relationships when your emotions then in that part take over. They're like, thinking brain, you can go to the back. I'm in charge now, and I'm driving. So that's what your amygdala does. It's the emotional center of your brain. The fascinating thing, what we know from science is, we can hook your brain up to machines and watch what happens. When you name the emotion that you're feeling, that part goes from doing this, to going, And the activity in the emotional center of your brain stops firing. And the activity in your rational part of your brain starts working. You calm the emotional center of your brain when you name the emotion. That's why counselors say, name it to tame it. Name your emotion if you're going to tame it. You want to tame the emotions that you have, they're there not by an accident, they're there by God's design. You want to tame it, you got to name it. I love this story. This guy is great. There's a counselor who, it's always so fun when counselors have to use their own techniques. So this guy, he and his wife had a young 9-year-old daughter, or 9-month-old daughter. Very big difference. And so one night, the little daughter, Cecilia, didn't sleep at all and was up all night. And so they didn't do it in shifts. Like some of you do this in shifts when your kids were young. You're like, oh, your turn tonight. I'm sleeping. So they didn't do it. So they both kept getting up all night long, so neither of them got a good sleep. Well, then, of course, you're tired, and the next morning, they decide to discuss whose job it was to get up with Cecilia when she's awake at night. So you can imagine how well that conversation went, right? I mean, bam, bam, bam. And finally, both of them stopped talking to each other. They just put their daughter in their car, drove silently without speaking to drop her off at daycare, and then went to work. And then he walks into work, and he sits down at his desk, and he's reminded that he had a meeting that day he totally forgot about, and he was the speaker. He had to present something. And on top of that, he had this client that came in that had an emergency, and he was overwhelmed. And he said this, I sat with my face in my hands at my desk for a moment. I was seething with what life had deposited on top of me. My temples were pulsing, and my watch said only 9:30 in the morning. And he said, in that moment, somehow, I remembered what I had recommended to my clients many times, but usually forgot to do myself. Name it to tame it. Name it to tame it. In other words, say to yourself out loud what emotion you're experiencing as you're experiencing it in order to get some distance from it. We know this is what happens. We know that loud part gets silent, and the rational part starts working again. Name it to tame it. He was great. He said, I'd recommended this tool to clients for years, but I'm fairly certain I had never tried it myself. Again, I was a therapist. I was simply labeling, this simple labeling practice was for my clients to use. It was self-management 101. I thought I was far beyond such basic strategies. I was wrong. Human beings, this is what we need to do. I can't tell you how many times I have used this strategy in my own life. I'm a big believer in this. I have notebooks filled with my attempts to do this over the years. Once I became aware that I really wasn't connected at all with my emotions, as if they weren't there, they were there. They were doing things inside of me, whether I was aware of them or not. Once I became aware of that, I would sit down and fill journals with trying to identify what was I feeling. And I can tell you now, over the years of doing this, that there are times that it is dramatic when I'm like, I'm just not feeling right. I sit down and I start journaling about it and I identify the emotion of what I'm feeling. And the moment I name it and I'm able to say, oh, I'm feeling really anxious. The moment I name it, you can feel that part start to close down. It starts to get a little more silent. So I want to ask you today, what are you feeling this holiday season? Some of you, good stuff. Some of you know you got some work to do because it's not all positive emotions that you have inside. Some of you, if you were honest, you would say that you feel overwhelmed or you feel sad or scared or depressed. Maybe I didn't even put your word up here. But if you want to be healthy this holiday season and deal with these blues, you got to deal with your emotions. So you set boundaries up. I'm going to limit how much negative input I'm getting. And I'm going to deal with what's emotionally going on inside of me. Then I'm going to take care of myself. You got to give yourself permission to say yes to you this holiday season. I'm saying those words and in my head I'm thinking, you are such a hypocrite. You have 2.5 weeks before Christmas. Do you know your to-do list in the next 2.5 weeks? I'm being very honest with you. I have no idea how I'm going to do this for myself, but I'm going to tell all of you to do it. So I am a confessed hypocrite this morning. So I don't know how I'm going to do it all. But isn't it crazy? I mean, it's like, oh yeah, holiday blues. What a surprise. Yeah. We work too many hours in the holidays, right? I've got friends that are working so much overtime to pay for all the stuff they're going to try and pay for. We work too much, we eat way too much, and we're not eating healthy stuff, are we? We're not doubling up on our spinach. We're doubling up on the cookies, right? And we drink too much, and we don't sleep as much, and we spend way too much and then wonder why we're a little down. Right, oh yeah, what a shock. I mean, this is how we live. And we do this all the time, and it's so easy to get caught up in it, and it's really important, and God would say this. I love the way that God knows what we're like and builds into the system of following him the importance of taking care of yourself. In the Bible, he says, you have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath day of rest dedicated to the Lord your God. So in other words, slow down. Take care of yourself. Do you know that God is saying that to you? You need to slow down and take care of yourself. Your body matters. What's going on inside your heart and your mind, this all matters to God. So again, this isn't profound and I'm not going to belabor it, but obviously take time to rest. Do you have, I promise you, one of the things I will do is I'm taking a nap this afternoon. I'm going to do. Beyond that, I don't know what else I'm going to do. But I can get that done today. Make sure that you keep exercising during the holidays, right? Keep exercising during the holidays. Now, there's something implied in that, right? That you are taking care of yourself, right? So I have a friend who, my friend really, really loves to walk outside in the summer, and then when it gets cold, exercise ends. So my friend is hilarious. She didn't want to fall into that pattern again this year, so what she did is every night she watches an hour of Dr. Phil. And Dr. Phil has such long commercials. It's like every few minutes he's cut into a 5-minute commercial break. And so she came up with the idea that every time Dr. Phil cuts to commercial break, she has stairs in her house, she'll walk the stairs. And she walks the stairs the entire time of Dr. Phil's commercial breaks for an hour during the hour episode. She is in such good shape. She's made it through Thanksgiving without gaining weight and ran a mini marathon yesterday because Dr. Phil. It's like, you can do this. You don't need a gym membership. You can just be a little bit more active than you are right now. So it's just, I mean, we all know this, right? I'm preaching the choir. Buy something green and leafy. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But put it in your fridge because emotionally it'll be a win for you, right? You don't have to eat it, but at least you're halfway there. And if the mood struck you, you could eat some of it and then like, oh yeah, check mark, I got it, right? But you can't even eat it if you don't own it. But that's all I got to say about that. So. And then this is really important. Add some emotionally recharging elements. And this is what I want you to think about. Because again, the first thing is about stopping the leaks in the bottom of the bucket so you're not getting drained so much by emotionally draining people or by financial decisions you shouldn't be making or by overcommitting in your schedule. Okay, so you got to plug the holes. Then you got to put something in positive. And I went online and I found this. I thought this was great. These are actual things that people do at the holiday season that they love. And I could see myself doing some of these and loving them too. And I want you to think about what could you add this holiday season that will do and that'll be emotionally recharging for you. So some families, what they like to do is they like to make all kinds of holiday treats and surprise their neighbors with them. I live at 210 East Walnut Street, okay, if you were wondering about that. So, okay. One family I read about camps out under the Christmas tree with their young kids. I thought, what a cool little thing, right? And for the kids, can you imagine how exciting that is for them? For the parents, sounds like a lot of ibuprofen the next morning, but it's okay, right? A cool little thing that they do. Help the needy at a serving event. There's so many different ways. You can ring the bell. They're always looking for bell ringers. There'll be all kinds of feeding opportunities at the holidays. You know, Culver's usually does something on Christmas Day, and I've had friends participate in that many times. Give a Christmas Eve gift to a needy family. One of the most meaningful moments of any Christmas I've ever had was one time when we found out about this family that was really struggling, and a group of people that I was in a life group at the time. We all raised money. We bought all these presents for these people, and we delivered them on Christmas Day. Oh, it was Christmas Eve day. So they'd have presents to open, and this family was so poor. I have never forgotten the feeling of that. You're talking about a massive deposit into the bucket emotionally. I still feel the joy of that all these years later. What could you do like that? And maybe you can't afford financially to do it, but I bet you could get a whole bunch of friends together and do it. One family likes to sit down and relive the best memories from the whole year. Isn't that a great idea? I love that idea. It's like so many of us are going to relive. You're living through something painful, and all you can think about is all the bad stuff, but good stuff happened this year too. And then see the lights, which is really fun. I just did this last week in Madison, drove through the lights. What a fun thing. And some of you are like, that sounds boring to you. Great, then don't do it. But you got to add something that does something that shows that you're going to take care of yourself. What's that plan? Tied directly to that, and here comes number one, okay? So this is where this belonged. Way down here is find a way to add some humor to your holiday. Find a way to add some humor to your holiday. Look at this list. This is what we're dealing with at the holidays, right? I mean, couldn't we even put more things on this list? That's what we're dealing with. We're trying to deal with all of this at the holidays in this very short window of time that thanks to Thanksgiving being so incredibly late was even shorter. We're trying to pack it all in, and God says, listen, you can't do it all. So I love this verse. A cheerful heart does good like medicine. When was the last time you were on medicine for any reason? When was the last time you had to go get a prescription filled and take some medicine? Can you remember the last time you had to do this? So, you get sick or something breaks down and the doctor says, well, here's your prescription. I want you to go fill it. You take the medicine and you get better, right? That's the goal of the medicine. And God says, you know what will make you better is cheerfulness, laughter. And again, I bet if I were to ask you, what have you planned for the holiday season to laugh? What's your plan? Do you have a laughter plan? I bet none of you have that. And yet God says this will make you better, healthy. It's like medicine for your soul. And the good thing is for me, again, Mayo Clinic agrees with this. Look at this. Mayo Clinic website, we know that what humor does, it activates and relieves your stress responses and it relieves pain in your body. Did you know that? If you're laughing, it does these kind of positive physical things for you. So for me, thankfully, I find a tremendous amount of humor at the holiday season with the movies that are on. I don't even know how many times I've watched some of these. It doesn't matter. I still laugh during the Santa Claus. So with Tim Allen, like, that may not be your movie. That's fine. That's my movie. That one makes me laugh. The only sad part of it is it came out in 1994. I read that in prepping. It's like, 94, that's like 25 years ago. How can 25 years have passed? That made me sad. Elf, hands down, I will be watching this and just laughing all the way through it, all the stupid lines that I've laughed at every single year. I can't help it. Did you hear that? I mean, there's so many great parts of that movie that just make me laugh. And then You'll Shoot Your Eye Out. I absolutely love this movie. There's so many parts when he beats the other kid up. I know it's bad. Don't beat people up, but I laugh hysterically. It's just funny. Sorry. Okay, right. So you got to, what are the things that make you laugh? What are the things that you enjoy? So many things you can add in. And then one last thing, okay, and this will be really brief. This is so essential that you find a way to add a God-focused piece to your holiday. So do you see what I'm saying? You are going to have 1,000 drains out of your life in the next 2.5 weeks. People asking for things, and unhealthy people asking for things, and financial expenses, and the bucket has holes, so you got to seal it. I'm going to put appropriate boundaries in. I'm going to keep it going out, but then I'm going to make deposits. I'm going to do things that are good for me. By the way, you know that's okay, right? It's not selfish to take care of yourself. And I'm going to make sure I'm finding some ways to laugh and adding humor, because that's good medicine. And then I'm also spiritually going to add in a God element. Have you ever had this happen in your life? In my family, every year since the kids were little, on Christmas morning when we would open presents, we always had traditions that we followed. Kids would wake us up every Christmas morning, and we could always hear them coming. They never woke us up. We always knew when they were coming. But then they'd run down the living room, and they'd sit and wait. And we'd get coffee, and we'd come in and sit down, and I would sit down, I'd light a fire in the fireplace, and then I would sit there, and the very first thing we did every single Christmas morning was I would have a Bible, and I would read the story of Christmas from Luke chapter 2. We always started with that. And then we would pray as a family. And every year, that was our tradition. You ask the kids, Christmas isn't Christmas without that. And I remember one year, sat down, I started reading, and I didn't say this, but in my head I'm thinking, this is the first time I've really thought about what Christmas is actually about this entire Christmas season. I've been so busy with activity that I haven't even thought about what it's really about. The coming of Jesus into the world to save me. Have you ever had an experience like that? Where you just blasted through Christmas and you didn't even think about the reason why we're celebrating this season. I don't want that to happen to you. So on the back of your notes, flip your notes over real quick. Take a look on the back. Here are all kinds of things, ideas that I found online, and you can Google more different ways to keep Christ in Christmas. But I'm just asking you to think about selecting one. I have a nativity scene set up right in my living room for the first time. I've never done this before, but I really like the tradition, and when I look at it, I remind myself, that's what it's about. It's about that. I've been in a family celebration on my own where they did the birthday cake for Jesus on Christmas Eve. I've seen that. It is so interesting. A huge family, they lit candles, and they sang happy birthday to Jesus on Christmas Eve. And for them, that was their family tradition. You've got to come up with yours. What will you do to keep Jesus in the focus of the Christmas season? All right. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish today. Again, some of you, you're okay. You're fine. Things are going well this holiday season, and you didn't need this right now. You probably will need it later. Everyone has times in the season, in the calendar, where they get down a little bit. And so for some of you, these will be really important for the future. But some of you, these are important right now. Some of you came in here and you are really hurting and your bucket feels empty. And this is not the most wonderful time of the year for you. And we want you to know that we're praying for you as a church. And we will pray for you. But think about which of these things you can start to implement in your own life to take care of yourself at this holiday. Were there any of these that really struck you as we went through it today? Think about what you can start doing this next week to begin to stop the leaks and put something positive in. And for some of you, you're just exploring your faith here. And again, we're so glad you're watching online or you're here with us today, and we're grateful that you've come. And for us, it is all about Jesus. All of this other stuff, presents and food and all the things that we do, this is distraction from the essence of what Christmas is about. It's about Jesus leaving his throne in heaven, coming into the world to lay down his life for all of us. Because you and I matter so much to God that he came for us. Jesus died on a cross to pay for what we've done that's wrong, so that if you will forgive him, if you will let him, he will forgive you. Would you want God's gift of forgiveness? His gift of eternal life? You can have it. All you have to do is turn to him this morning and ask for his gift, and he will come and forgive you and make his home inside of you. You can say, Jesus, I'm turning to you today. I'm putting my trust in you today. Please forgive me for what I've done. Come make your home inside of me. In Jesus' name, amen.